We're live from news about Desawe Kanda, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I'm Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, the New Patriotic Party's parliamentary candidate for the Ablekuma North constituency in the 2024 elections fails in her bid to halt the Electoral Commission's planned rerun of elections in the 19 disputed polling stations. The party, however, stands firm in its decision to boycott the rerun on Friday in these 19 polling stations. Stay with us. We have a conversation tonight. The board of the National Cathedral of Ghana, that project, a botched one, what you would say, they've rejected proposals to convert the project site into a cultural center, insisting that the original version for the cathedral must be preserved. They want the cathedral built other than anything else on that said land. Stay with us. We've got conversation for you on that one. Also, we continue our assessment of the performance of the John Dramani Mahama-led National Democratic Congress, staying on the matters of corruption and good governance, the fight against corruption and improving governance in this country. Stay with us. We have this and more, including some matters arising from the UN vote on issues related to some matters of human rights and others. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Ablekuma North, has been responding to that. You are an integral part of the conversation as always. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Well, let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
Ghana's Foreign Minister Ablekuma has described as misleading reports claiming that Ghana abstained from a UN Human Rights Council vote on LGBTQ issues. According to the minister, the question being voted on was whether the mandate of the independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity should be renewed. According to the foreign minister, the decision to abstain is in line with Ghana's current position, which is against legalizing LGBTQ rights in Ghana.
The ministry is issuing a statement, and we shall be quoting copiously, very clear terms, the exact question as was put at the meeting, so that you can also independently verify. And it is clear that there was no vote on support for LGBTQI, whether you are for LGBTQI or you are against. If that was the vote, you can be assured that Ghana will have voted clearly against, because that is our position.
The minority in parliament has accused the government of causing financial loss to the state by spending $1.2 million on a relaunch of the chip-embedded passport. They claim the policy was contracted and financed by the Akufo-Addo government, making the relaunch by the current government unnecessary. Deputy Ranking Member on the Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration Committee, Nana Asafo Eje Aye, addressed the media.
An initiative fully conceived, contracted, and financed by the previous Akufo-Addo-led administration. After Cabinet approved in August 2024, the outgoing government secured supplier credit, completed all testing, and formally launched the project on 2nd December 2024. When the new minister staged a costly relaunch on the 28th April 2025, an event that alone cost the taxpayer $1.2 million US.
The Accra High Court has set July 23 to begin the trial of former GIIF Board Chair Professor Christian Ameawe-Kumfi and former CEO Solomon Asamoah over the failed Accra SkyTrain project. They are accused of causing financial loss to the state and misusing public funds, charges they both deny. In court on July 9, Professor Ocansey's lawyers withdrew their request to have the charges dropped. The judge struck out the application. The prosecution says it will call its first witness when the trial starts. The case has been adjourned to July 23. Private legal practitioner Kwame Akufu says the process the suspended Chief Justice is going through over claims of misconduct has nothing to do with the people's opinions of her. The comment comes as the suspended CJ goes to the ECOWAS courts over claims of human rights abuse in the process against her.
The Constitution says that the proceedings must be held in camera.
Exactly.
The things that the land and the Lordship, the Chief Justice, the leadership Justice Stockholm talks about is a word against the committee. We do not know what happens in the committee. But I will say that because the Constitution speaks about in-camera proceedings, and that body is a quasi-judicial body, persons who are aggrieved, right, should be bringing applications to the High Court by way of judicial review to contest it.
President John Dramani Mahama has unveiled an ambitious vision for Ghana's maritime future, highlighting national security, economic opportunity and regional cooperation as key pillars for growth and resilience. The announcement came during the 4th International Maritime Defense Exhibition and Conference held at Burma Camp, where the president's speech was delivered on his behalf by Chief of Staff Julius Deborah.
We are exploring various avenues to equip the Navy with offshore patrol vessels and fast patrol boats to augment existing platforms. As part of our 8-pillar strategy under the National Reset Agenda, Ghana aims to become West Africa's premier regional hub for trade and investment.
There's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on 3FM 92.7. Also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook. And as always, probably brought to you by Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior, and Sasso Insecticide Spray and Coil, Tum Tum Preco. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight. This one got a number of you talking, and rightly so, because the board of the National Cathedral of Ghana has rejected proposals to convert the project into a cultural center, insisting that the original vision for the cathedral must be preserved. Yep. Well, as far as we do know, a number of persons indicated publicly that they were not part of the members of the board of trustees of this botched National Cathedral project anymore. But then again, there are still persons who are functioning and identifying themselves as members of the National Cathedral Board of Trustees. So when we got this statement, it was quite shocking because as far as we do know, there has not been any indication by this administration that they will continue this National Cathedral project, as in they're going to complete this National Cathedral project conceived and executed essentially by the previous administration. And as we do know, that cathedral site does not have a cathedral there. This was a major issue as well for the Operation Recover or Loot Oral Preparatory Team. This National Cathedral project scandal was one that they indeed captured in their report. And we do know the Attorney General has been speaking about this. We'll bring it to you. But what you're seeing on the screen right now is the current state of the National Cathedral project. That is what you find there. This is it. And what you're seeing, we took these videos yesterday at 2 p.m. This is the current state of the National Cathedral project. And you've seen a number of, structures in there that has collected water, rainwater over the period. And then clearly, as was captured in various reports that we've done in the past, there hasn't been any work going on at this cathedral site for a very, very long time. Now, there was an audit, the first phase of an audit report that captured some documentation But as far as we do know, the National Cathedral Board of Trustees themselves expressed frustration about not having an updated audit report even as of the end of 2024. In fact, the third quarter of 2024, they were asking for the audit report that was being conducted. So that what you see now is what is the current state of the National Cathedral project site. And we understand that all of this, with what you're saying, cost over $58 million. Now, this was one of the demands of the Operation Recover All Loot Preparatory Team's report, that an investigation be conducted and a retrieval of the said $58 million that has been pumped or sunk into this National Cathedral project. So this is what is happening there right now. But earlier today, we got this statement from a board, that the headline or the letterhead of the National Cathedral Board of Trustees, essentially. I'm going to go into the details of why they are still insisting that regardless that there's been a change in administration, and even though it was the former president, Nana Akufo-Addo's own promise to God, they believe that that should be continued by this administration. They said they held an emergency meeting on July 7 in response to online media reports that the cathedral site, what I just showed to you, gifted by the state for the construction of the National Cathedral, is to be converted into a cultural convention center. Now, they describe the site I just showed to you as a gift by the state. But I will tell you why there's a contention about the description of this site being a gift. Because there were structures and companies that had their offices on this particular land that had to be demolished, and then compensation paid, and judges that had their homes there also resettled, all at the cost, or to the cost of the Ghanaian people. We essentially had to pay for this. Then the report, according to what they say they saw, the board says, although they have not received official communication and or confirmation on such a decision, it nonetheless made the following observations. This is the Board of Trustees talking in this statement, that the National Cathedral was proposed to provide a sacred infrastructure for the formal religious activities of state, including state funerals and national thanksgiving services. And in fact, they say the president's declaration of July 1 as Ghana's official National Day of Prayer and the organization of the first Christian National Day of Prayer outdoors, that's outdoors, beg your pardon, at the forecourt of the State House, provides both the justification and urgency to complete the National Cathedral. The point is, they say that, well, the president declared July 1 as a day of national prayer. In their view, if the National Cathedral had been built, the prayers, the Christian prayers would have taken place there. So they say, to the extent that the president has declared July 1 as a day of national prayer, it's even more imperative to have the National Cathedral built. Beyond that, they say the integration of additional elements, including a Bible museum that tells the history of contributions to the church in Ghana and Africa, and all the others, say, in their view, it's a clear justification for it. They put out a number of things. They also say the site for the National Cathedral was gifted by the state to the National Cathedral of Ghana, incorporated as a company, limited by guarantee, with a deed to the land transferred to the company. Now, why is this particular description of this land being a gift being contested? And this is it, and I'm going to show you. Here's the reason why. Because even though the National Cathedral Board of Trustees say this land we just showed to you in the prime area was a gift, this is how much it had to cost us. All of these structures, I'm going to put on the screen. The judges' bungalows About 11 of them, we're told, had their residences there. The Mali ambassador's residence was also located on this land, and that had to be relocated or rebuilt at the cost of Ghana or Ghanaians. The Shraj Deputy Commissioner's residence was located on this land. He had to be relocated because that had to be demolished. Judicial Training Institute was demolished. Scholarship Secretariat, the building was demolished. The Passport Head Office, we had to build a new one close to the International Press Center because it was demolished. The Comsys IT Systems Limited building, we had to compensate them. This company, it's a private company. We had to look for another office, to compensate them for them to go and look for another office. We understand they are also located in another prime area in Accra as we speak. And Waterstone Rail Apartment Complex, you recall that they even took a legal action against the state for the demolishing of the apartment complex in there. All of this to make way for this National Cathedral project on that said land that the Board of Trustees says was a gift to them. But it may be a gift, but certainly came at a great cost to the Ghanaian people. This $58 million that has been sunk into this project, as has been published. Here's the breakdown. I'm going to put it on the screen right now. The first payment was advance payment for mobilization for a consultant working on the design for the National Cathedral. And that is the architect who worked on the entire design, and we do know is the celebrated David Ajayi. Some 445,000 cedis, that's equivalent of $89,000 at the prevailing exchange rate at the time. Now, on the 5th of March 2021, another payment was made. Same for consultancy services in respect of the design. So David Ajayi in there as well. You know, we're talking about some over 13.9 million in that regard. Then also on 10th of February 2021, another payment for consultancy service for the design, again, going to the same David Ajayi, from what we understand, as the architect for this project, over 32 million cedis at the prevailing rate. Then, on the 29th of October, the Government of Ghana contribution, that's you and I, our money, to the National Cathedral Secretariat to enable commencement of the planned activities, over 142.7 million. Then, on the 19th of August, there was an additional Government of Ghana contribution to the National Cathedral for the construction of the National Cathedral project, over 58.2 million cedis. At the time, that was about $10 million, thereabout. Then, on the 31st of March, Government of Ghana contribution again for the construction of this cathedral project, 25 million cedis. That's what, at the time, over $3.5 million. The total of over $58 million sunk into this project. So you want to think about it. That's the question that we're having on our minds right now. The only time the Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayine, has mentioned the National Cathedral during the number of press conferences he's done to update us was the recent one, about almost 2 months ago. He just said a brief statement on it, made a brief statement, not much detail about the investigations into this National Cathedral project. But we do know that this is one of 5 reasons why the special prosecutor is seeking Ken Ofori-Attah's presence physically to answer questions for this. But this is Dr. Dominic Ayine earlier. Take a look.
Now, the investigation in the National Service Ghost Names scandal has also progressed well. Other matters such as National Cathedral, mathematical sex, senior high school Wi-Fi are also nearing completion, and dockets are being prepared for prosecutions to begin. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, my fellow countrymen and women, as your Attorney General, I wish to assure you that I have sufficient reserves of integrity. Now, the investigation in the National Service Ghost Names scandal has also progressed well. Other matters such as National Cathedral, mathematical sex, Senior high school Wi-Fi are also nearing completion, and dockets are being prepared for prosecutions to begin. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, my fellow countrymen and women, as your Attorney General, I wish to assure you that I have sufficient reserves of integrity.
Well, so that's Dr. Dominic Ayine there, and Martin Pebo is private legal practitioner, and we bring him in here because he was part of the Operation Recover All Loot oral preparatory team. And this National Cathedral project was captured in there as one of the various demands that the persons who submitted petitions to them want the $58 million recovered by oral or by government. Council, good evening. Thank you for joining us. You've seen a copy of the statement from this National Cathedral Board of Trustees. They say that this land was a gift by the state for the cathedral, and they want, in their view, the cathedral to be built there and nothing else. I mean, do they, from where you sit, have that moral authority or the locus to make this demand?
No. So the first part of your question about whether there's a moral right. No, I don't agree that there's a moral right. I don't agree because, Ghanaians largely fought against the site of the National Cathedral and the costs involved because it came at a time when the economic situation wasn't any that good. You remember, of course, it started before 2022, but since 2022, we've been suffering, cost of living skyrocketed, etc. Inflation hit 54% and all that. Unemployment is high and all that. So the National Cathedral appeared as a nuisance. Yes, I say so because I'm just reflecting the sentiments of the people. This has nothing to do with religion. We are doing the analysis of our economic well-being. So we'll not just, fasten ourselves onto religious arguments. We are looking at our reality. Citizens were saying, look, we are hungry, we don't have jobs, etc. So this is not a priority. And if anything at all, you could consider taking it to Pram area. I mean, like outside Accra, etc. Yes, I also know others were saying that the Bible says we will always have the poor with us. But that's not an excuse for us to continue to spend state resources, use state resources in a manner that is not optimum, or in loose vernacular, in a manner that is wasteful, that is oga chopping the money nyafu. Yes, we can't say that because Bible says we always have the poor with us, we can allow the executive, especially the president, to spend our money anyhow. No, that's not good enough, right? Yes, so if you look at it, it was ill-timed and then ill-located and ill-costed. You see, so all the ills, ill-timed, ill-located, ill-costed, etc. So for the Cathedral Board to come out and challenge the president in this manner, it actually shows a certain inadequate appreciation of the situation that the state finds itself in. Those problems are still critical. The fact that cost of living is high, unemployment is high, etc. Those problems are still with us. So I would have thought that the best thing the Cathedral Board should have done was to seek a private audience with the president. You see it? That would have been better. But I mean, of course, if eventually everything failed, diplomacy through back channel communication failed, then we can understand. But if the president announced what he intends to do and then the Cathedral Board also fires back, then what do you expect? It means the president will also fire. Then citizens will say more fire, more fire. And then what would happen? You say, so I really think that this statement by the Cathedral Board is a bit rushed because they shouldn't forget that citizens have complained about it in the oral to the oral committee, the stage 1 of which I was a part. The National Cathedral project featured prominently. Citizens were upset. There were multiple persons who complained about it. You remember how even Parliament hauled the then Finance Minister Oforiatta to Parliament to explain, and he then finally said they used the contingency vote as voting at an election. That's the money meant for contingency for a capital project like this. And all of us citizens and our representatives, the parliamentarians, are like, we're not happy. And eventually, yes, it was part of the censure that Oforiatta was taken into, and the record is there. So the Cathedral Board should have looked at all of this, and then also the fact that there are investigations ongoing about causing financial loss to the state in respect of that same National Cathedral project. So the National Cathedral project at this time doesn't need and really has to stay away from adverse publicity. Yes, my key word here is adverse publicity. It's not good for the National Cathedral project. So the board members are advised to talk to the president behind the scenes, because let's not forget, the investigations have not been concluded. I see in their statement they are talking about an audit by Deloitte and Touche, etc. But that one doesn't replace the investigations that the criminal investigations citizens have called for. The criminal investigations citizens have called for is something that will be gone through, something that will be seen through to the end. So the board of the National Cathedral should not create the impression that if Deloitte and Touche does any audit, then that is kosher. That is sufficient to wipe out the allegations of criminality, etc. Don't forget, there are issues of procurement. This same matter went to Shraj, and Shraj ruled that there were breaches of the Procurement Act, right, Mr. Ocansey?
Yes,
Shraj
indeed.
so held that there were breaches of the Procurement Act. And you know what breaches of the Procurement Act is? The Procurement Act, if you breach same, is a crime. And those are offenses that the special prosecutor has a mandate to prosecute, etc. So that is what I would say. We haven't seen the last of the National Cathedral, but to be candid with you, the statement by the board was too rushed.
Right, but then again, you describe this statement as too rushed. Already, we've heard from the Attorney General briefly on this, that investigations into the National Cathedral are ongoing. As to when prosecution will start, we have no idea. We do know that the special prosecutor is also seeking the former finance minister, Kenneth Oforiatta, to come answer questions about the expenditure on this National Cathedral. As I showed to you, it's actually beyond the $58 million, as far as we do know, if you add the resettlement of these judges, and then also the building of the new passport office, the scholarship secretariat, these private companies that had their company buildings also located on this land. All of that had not been quantified as yet. So we don't know the full scale of the cost of this entire project as we speak. Should we be seeing some questions answered by some persons beyond the finance minister as we speak?
Oh, absolutely. That goes to that question. Yes, people will be answering. Yes, the board, but it doesn't stop with the board. The board were doing the bidding of ex-President Akufo-Addo. He said he had a covenant with God. His personal mission to fulfill a promise that he personally made to God, that a cathedral will be built to the glory of God. And yet he was using state resources when he should have raised funds privately. So I'm expecting that apart from the board members, Akufo-Addo, Oforiatta, etc., should be answering questions, yes, for the use of $58 million. That's even apart from the value of the land. Of the land, etc., is also very colossal. I'm looking at the $58 million that was pumped into that cathedral hole.
Yeah.
So Akufo-Addo and co should be answering questions.
I see, but then also what we do know from the Attorney General so far is that brief statement he made in that press conference, one of the 3 or 4 press conferences that he has had, updating the nation on these cases, on the oral investigations and some other cases as well that has been brought to their attention. I mean, would you expect at least a lot more detail in the next press conference by the Attorney General on this National Cathedral project?
I believe based on the press conferences the AG has held so far, if he's ready, he will come out. Yes, so far he's made it clear that, look, he would do press conferences, which we welcome, so that he would always keep the public informed and to carry us along. Whole of government approach, government policies, etc., should carry the citizens along. Yes, you don't make much progress if a government is doing it all alone and not involving the citizens and carrying citizens along, right? So I believe Dr. Ayine would come out in due course. I don't think he needs to be reminded. He himself, he knows that he has a charge to keep, and I'm sure he would want to go down as Ghana's best Attorney General ever. So he would waste no time in informing the public when he's ready.
Right. Now, I do appreciate you for this. Martin Pebo is private legal practitioner, a member of the Operation Recover All Loot preparatory team. They've wrapped up their work, submitted their report to the president. The Attorney General is implementing, in fact, taking action on the prosecution, investigation, and then prosecution of some of the cases captured in the oral report, as was submitted by the team that lawyer Martin Pebo was part of. And the National Cathedral, we understand, was in there as well. We'll keep an eye on how things play out here on Ghana Tonight. But before I go into the next issue, we got notice of the final batch of the Deputy Minister's appointment by the President, John Dramani Mahama. It's been one that we've been watching and knocking on the doors of the presidency to get answers, because until today, the president was governing with 56 ministers. He promised 60 ministers, but now this 4 makes up the 60 that he promised. James Jachakwesen, Member of Parliament, now heading to the Foreign Affairs Ministry as a Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. He's going to be deputizing Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa in there. You know this man has had his battles with the courts over the last at least 4 years, until some respite and the breathing space that was given to him, and he heaving a sigh of relief last year. And then now, this promise, if you recall, ahead of the elections, when the president went to the Cape Coast, specifically to campaign, there was a promise that was made. And this is it. There's a fulfillment that has been done as well. Dorcas Toffee is a member of parliament for the Jomoro constituency and minister of, it's a deputy minister for the transport ministry, heading there. And then also Mohammed Adam Suparu is heading to the Ministry of Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation, and he's going to be deputizing Samuel Nate George in that Ministry of Communication, Digital Technology and Innovation, and Grace Ayensu Dankwa, Member of Parliament for Sikado Ketan constituency, heading to the Health Ministry as a Deputy Health Minister. It's quite clear what the direction of this is. But beyond this, there were some other appointments as well that we got to know of today. This Kenneth Thompson, a former CEO of Dalex Finance, today we got to know has been appointed as board chair of the Agricultural Development Bank, ADB, and also Frank Edu Jr., former MD of Car Bank, also appointed as board chair of the National Investment Bank, and Meredith Nakai Lamte Adi, the doctor, now also appointed as permanent delegate of Ghana to UNESCO. So that is information that we got earlier today. In fact, she was also congratulated and engaged on by the Foreign Affairs Minister earlier today, as we got that information. And then it was that same venue that the Foreign Affairs Minister took that opportunity to address matters relating to Ghana's position on the vote at the United States. That's the United Nations, I beg your pardon. So here's what we do know. Meredith Nakai Lamte Adi, permanent delegate of Ghana to UNESCO. Kenneth Thompson, board chair of Agricultural Development Bank, ADB. Frank Edu Jr., board chair of the National Investment Bank, NIB, as well. So this is Ghana tonight. Now, coming up next, New Patriotic Party's parliamentary candidate for the Ablekuma North constituency in the 2024 elections. She's failed in her bid to halt the Electoral Commission's planned rerun of elections in the 19 disputed polling stations. The party, however, stands firm in their decision to boycott the rerun. We'll tell you a bit more detail and how things are played out here ahead of the elections on Friday, July 11. And in these 19 polling stations, and according to the Electoral Commission, these elections will take place. And we'll tell you this specific polling station shortly. But Accra High Court earlier today dismissed the New Patriotic Party's interim injunction that sought to prevent the Electoral Commission from proceeding to run the elections in the 19 out of 281 polling stations in the Ablekuma North constituency on July 11. Now, the presiding judge, Ali Baba Abature, ruled that the balance of convenience favors the Electoral Commission's constitutional duty to ensure representation for the people. Let's get into it. My colleague Dennis Baberi-Wadam has been following this matter closely. He's joined me in the studio. Dennis, it's good to have you.
Thanks, Alfred. I'm here.
So,
yes, so we're back to the courts today.
Absolutely.
You recall on Monday we brought viewers that story that the MPP parliamentary candidate for Ablekuma North went to court this time around seeking to quash the decision of the Electoral Commission to run the election in 19 polling stations and also to prohibit the Electoral Commission from further carrying out that decision to hold the election in the 19 polling stations. Subsequent to that, they went to court today in an attempt to halt the process. That is to say, they were seeking an injunction, an interim injunction at that, so that the Electoral Commission and the other parties can be properly served for them to come and then justify why they are proceeding to rerun the election in view of a subsistent court order which had mandated the EC to collate the results and declare same. So unfortunately, that attempt had failed today, and reasons we'll look at very shortly. So basically, what the prayer of the MPP candidates in respect of this matter was to the effect that, yes, the Electoral Commission has taken a decision to run an election on the 11th of July, which is just this Friday. This decision was taken on the 1st of July. However, I have an issue with the whole process because I do not think that it lies with the Electoral Commission in the first place to even order a rerun of the election, considering that the courts in January had directed the Electoral Commission to collate and declare the results. And that subsequent to that court order in January, the Electoral Commission has been consistent in all its public communications to the effect that there were only 3 polling stations outstanding. And that if for anything at all, those 3 polling stations were those that are supposed to be collated and then the results declared. They also did indicate that in all those communications, the Electoral Commission informed the public and those who matter that the only thing that they needed to collate those 3 polling stations was security. So to that extent, all that they know that the Electoral Commission has to do in this matter is to go ahead with the collation and declaration of the results and not a rerun. That only a rerun is allowed where there's a tie under the rules governing the elections. So this whole thing of rerunning, they do not think it is lawful. They think it goes against the order of the court. Now, that is a matter that will have to be determined. And they do acknowledge that in the circumstances, that cannot be heard before the July 11 election. That is how come they make a prayer to the court that give us 10 days, and that's what we call the interim injunction. Freeze the process 10 days. Within the 10 days, we'll be able to serve all the parties so that the case can be properly heard for a full determination to be made. They did indicate that if the court does not grant that order for the 10 days injunction, it will cause what they call a substantial miscarriage of justice, so much so that it cannot be remedied, that there cannot be remedies for the injustice that will be suffered by the MPP candidates.
Right.
However, the courts did not agree with that plea. That prayer was not taken because the court was also of the view that when you look at the totality of all the documents on the record and having gone through, listened to the arguments of counsel, mind you, this was an ex parte application. What it means is that it was only the lawyer of the applicant, who is the MPP's parliamentary candidate for Ablekuma North, who was in court, making that argument, that when you put all of that together and weigh that to what the Electoral Commission has to do, considering that it has a mandate to organize an election for the people for the whole Ablekuma North, to be represented in Parliament, which is their constitutional right, more harm will be caused if the Electoral Commission is restrained or injuncted, as opposed to if the election is allowed to go on. In other words, if the election is allowed to go on and then she eventually wins, the court is of the view that there is remedy for her or that she can be properly compensated. And to that extent, that's how come the court refused that injunction application for the interim injunction as they prayed the court to do. What essentially means is that in the absence of any other interim hurdle to cross, the election will happen on July 11, just 2 days away from today, as the Electoral Commission continues to prepare. We've also seen some NDC officials on the ground campaigning towards that. But we know the position of the MPP. For them, they still believe that this whole process, in their view, is not lawful because that the court order which allowed the EC to collate and declare the results is the one that is still subsisting, and that should be the one that should be the prevailing one.
I see.
It's the reason we are seeing all these court cases, especially the one that we had to look at today in respect of this matter, Alfred.
Oh, good stuff. Now, let's stay a bit further on this. And Musa Dankwa is the Director of Global Info Analytics, is joining us on Zoom. Musa Dankwa, appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. But before that, let's hear from Justin Kwefrimpong, who maintains that the party won this election on December 7 with 414 vote difference, vote margin, in favor of their candidate, Naneke Friye, in the Ablekuma North constituency. Take a look.
And therefore, it comes as very shocking that the Electoral Commission, the inconsistency from the Electoral Commission is a shame. But for us in the New Patriotic Party, we remain resolute. And we know that our candidate, Nana Friye, won the elections with a margin of 440. And therefore, it comes as very shocking that the Electoral Commission, the inconsistency from the Electoral Commission is a shame. But for us in the New Patriotic Party, we remain resolute. And we know that our candidate, Nana Friye, won the elections with a margin of 440 votes.
Well, so that's Justin Frimpong there. And they maintain that they won the elections with 414 votes in favor of Naneke Friye. But if you look at the margin, in fact, just put it on record, this is a constituency that the MPP has won since 1996, right? And they have a hold. That's their stronghold. And Musa Dankwa, ahead of the elections in 2024, indicated that there was going to be a flip. But this is it. Right from the year 2000 elections, The NPP won with 62.9%. The lowest they have come in terms of the margin of victory is in the year 2008, 57.5%. The NDC inched up a bit. In fact, the best performance of the NDC until 2024 was in the 2012 elections with 38.8%. But the NPP has always maintained their dominance. In fact, in the 2020 elections, they won with 64.2% of the valid vote cast. That's thousands, as against the NDC's 35%. So there was clearly, even if you go with the narrative of the NPP, the NDC showed up strongly in 2024 with that vote difference of just 414, as the NPP has maintained. Now, Mr. Dankwa is going to be joining us on Zoom on Ghana tonight, right after this quick break. Stay with us. We'll have a conversation on this. But these are the 19 polling stations up for grabs, from what we understand, on the day, that is on Friday, that the Electoral Commission has earmarked for the re-election, the rerun of the elections in that constituency, Ablekuma North constituency. Stay with us. When we're back, we'll tell you the specific polling station. Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. Mr. Dankwa is the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. Mr. Dankwa, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Ahead of this rerun of the elections in the Ablekuma North constituency, 19 polling stations on Friday. I want to find out from you. You tested the pulse of this constituency going into election day, December 7th last year. Now, hearing the new developments right now, how does all of this strike you with the NPP's position on the decision by the Electoral Commission?
Yes, it is. And indeed, Ablekuma has been won by NPP since 1996. We remember they boycotted 1992. So when they joined in the multi-party democracy, they won that seat from 1996. And it hasn't changed hands since. Yes, it's their stronghold in the past, but in the last elections, we've seen several strongholds become vulnerable, and Ablekuma North is no exception.
But also, looking at the point that you just made, and that's what I demonstrated earlier, they're consistently winning this constituency since 1990, in fact, since 1996 up until now. And then the narrowing of the gap, even we're going with the NPP's narrative of winning that election last year with 414 of the valid votes cast as well. And now the position they take that the Electoral Commission is on a path of illegality because of that decision that it has taken to rerun the elections in the 19 polling stations. Mr. Dankwa.
Yes, indeed. If you look at the last poll we conducted in Ablekuma North, NDC was leading by a whisker, just a fraction of a percentage, but they were doing 50% on the last poll. And indeed, on the election day, when we did the exit poll from Ablekuma North, we saw that NPP was losing that seat on the exit poll.
Now, from what you said, what's your view on this decision that the party took, especially because of what they say was how things played out and the fact that they had the view that only 3 polling station results were outstanding, and now the Electoral Commission taking the decision that 19 polling stations had to be rerun because the scanned pink sheets that the NPP provided could not be authenticated.
Yes, it is. The data showed that NDC candidate was around 56% in the exit poll. And this poll was conducted in the most swing polling stations in the constituency.
I see. It's a very interesting point that you make about, because these 19 polling stations is what we're going to show shortly, and then the party's position on why they are of the view they're not going to take part in this election. That's essentially what has happened today. And now the court's also taking the decision that this application by their candidate for an injunction, it was ex parte for some 10 days so that they could serve the Electoral Commission, also being thrown out essentially today, paving the way for the Electoral Commission to conduct the elections on Friday. Mr. Dankwa, that's the position that the NPP is taking.
No, I'm not surprised because you look back before the December elections, MPP numbers were depressed. They were less motivated to go out and vote. Across the country, we saw like almost nearly half of people who didn't vote were MPP supporters. So they were fighting really to energize their base. Election has been held. Mostly NDC has won the seats. So in terms of turnout, it's not going to motivate NPP folks in the constituency to go out there and vote under normal circumstances. And then again, you have a situation where the perception of voters across the country, and indeed in the region and the constituency, is not different from what we've seen in the country. So it will be difficult for them to go and queue in their numbers to vote against a party that is doing well or a government that is performing in the eyes of the voters. That was the hurdle I think they saw.
But I want us to take a listen now to Justin Frimpong yesterday at that press conference as well, and their position that they have continuously espoused about their view of how the electoral results from where they sat in December played out? And I'll seek your responses to exactly what he said, Mr. Dankwa. Take a listen to him.
And therefore, it comes as very shocking that the Electoral Commission, the inconsistency from the Electoral Commission is a shame. But for us in the New Patriotic Party, we remain resolute. And we know that our candidate, Nana Ekuye won the elections with a margin of 414 votes.
This is the consistent position of the NPP on the happenings in the Ablekuma North constituency and the reason why they've taken a decision not to be part of this rerun in the 19 polling stations on Friday.
It's from obvious because it's really, look at, even before the election, look at how close, according to their own figure, the numbers were. And Ablekuma North is not a place where the numbers should be close, but it was very close. And indeed, we saw their largest constituency, that where they get their biggest number from, Dominic Kobinya 4. So if you can't secure Dominic Kobinya, nowhere else is safe. So it was right for them to think that they could be losing it. So they better stay away.
I see. So it was because you felt what? They are going to lose the elections? That's why they stayed away? Or that decision to step aside? Okay, but then again, before we round it up, let's take a look at the specific polling stations, the 19 polling stations. Take a look at this. God First International School, Dakoman, Nyamiche, Pentecost Church, Mount Zion Assembly in Kwashiman, DVLA office, Awoshi, Adamame, 2, that's the Awoshi, Esiedu, Jedu, Memorial School in Awoshi, and then we also have the Living Spring Day Nursery, Kwashibu, also at the Lord's Pentecostal Church in Kwashibu, and then Methodist Church, Odoko, and St. John the Baptist Catholic Church in Odoko as well, and there's Radiant Way Preparatory School, North Odoko, Attico School Complex, Odoko, South Odoko 4 and 5 School, Odoko, all of these schools where polling stations were located. It's part of the 19, Pentecost Church, Chineboa, and Light of Gospel Miracle Chapel, and then MTTD Odoko Divisional Station, the polling station there. There's going to be a polling station located there as well. The Roman Catholic Church, Buzia Junction, Odoko, Sakaman. Bethel Baptist Church, Sakaman. Presby Church, Odoko. Church of Pentecost, North Odoko. And then also, in fact, this same Church of Pentecost has a number of polling stations located there at that particular church premises. So these are the 19 polling stations that there's going to be a rerun of the elections in the Ablekuma North constituency. We remain your election command center. We will be there right from when polls open at 7 a.m., all things being equal, until the last ballot is counted. So stay with us as we build up strongly to the 11th, which is Friday. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do appreciate your company. Join us same time tomorrow for another conversation. My name is Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by